Sandra, my colleague. And also we are recording this. And then we'll just talk quickly about what is Shopware United and who are we. And then we'll move on to the panel discussion. So just quickly introduce myself. I'm Martin. I'm from Denmark. I'm a partner in an agency called Vexel, where we develop shopware solutions and have been doing that for the last 3 years. Before that, it was Magento. This also is something we see a lot of the community around shopware is coming from Magento as well. And also with me, I have my colleague, Sander, who is working for Shopware and also for Shopware United. Sander is here to lend a hand when you have questions. If there's any problem with Zoom or something else, please write that in the chat and Sander will help out.
Yes.
Yeah, and he has, yeah. So, if we move on to what is Shopware United, we formed Shopware United because we needed an English first focus around the community around Shopware. Shopware is a German platform, and the community around Shopware was very German-centric in the beginning. And since they've now been moving to a lot of different countries, we started to see that there was a need of having a more international community around Shopware. We are both developers, we are agency owners, there's merchants, and also a lot of tech partners around it, and everyone can join in and attend. We do webinars like this one here, but we also do physical events. We had some great ones in Poland, led by Boris, who's also here. And we will later this year as well have someone in Denmark and probably also UK and more places. You'll find more about us on shopwareunited.com and feel free to go in there and join us as well. But today we are here to talk about PIM. For that we have 5 good panelists. We have a really strong setup today where we have two platforms and we have 2 agency owners. And then we have a broker in the middle that is called PIM vendors. But I'll just let them introduce themselves. So we will start off with Klaus. And I'll get the word to Klaus.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, my name is Klaus. I'm CEO at PIMcore for about a year. And I have a dual background in IT, software development, and business management marketing. So I really into I really love both sides and being a bridge builder for both sides. And I was working for several digital agencies for, I would say, more than 10 or 15 years, serving different types of clients in different verticals in regards to PIM, DAM, various sorts of CMS and DXP projects in conception, but also in consulting advisory. And yeah, now I'm responsible for growing PIMcore as an organization, and I'm still learning every day, and that's what I'm loving about that business and about those domains, which are in fact so complex. And yeah, that's what I love.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Klaus. Next, we have Stefan from PIM Vendors.
Hi, yeah, I'm Stefan Spijkers from PIMvendors.com, one of the co-founders here. I actually have a background on the user side of PIM. I worked for many e-commerce startups and scale-ups in the past 10 years, mainly in home and living and fashion. Currently working on PIM Vendors as a co-founder, and we actually make sure that the selection of a PIM for our customers is the best fitting PIM for them. So we see a lot of bias in the market, but through us, you have access to independent information and independent tools. With our main product is actually the shortlist generator, where you can get a shortlist of 5 different PIM solutions that fit best for your company. And I'm very curious to hear everyone talk about PIM and offer our insight from sort of the in the middle position that we have. So we speak both to customers, implementation partners, and the vendors, of course. So
thank you very much. Next up, we have Bart from Ergonaut.
Hello everyone. Bart, I'm representing Ergonaut. I'm leading Ergonaut all the commercial operations. Basically, my background is also likewise from consulting. For many years, I was working for small family-based, German-based company called SAP. So I was there for a few years. Later on, I was moved to more the customer experience space, to Adobe, the Magento side. Right now, with the team, we are developing Ergonote PIM, and I hopefully I have hoped for today for a great discussion around this topic, and definitely share the views from the vendor side, from the agency side, and also from Stefan, from I would say someone who is recommending the solutions. Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. And then we have Hans from OneDrop.
Hello, everybody. My name is Hans. I am a CTO for approximately 10 years now. We have done several projects with Shopware and PIM integrations. At the moment, we are specialized on Akeneo, but we're open to other systems. We have written our own Akeneo connector. As we found out, there is an existing one, but it doesn't actually work. At the moment, I'm also evaluating Ergonote, as I got to know Bart on the last Shopware Unconference. By the way, great event. Thank you, Shopware United. And but I'm also evaluating different systems. It's a bit of shame. I have also some experience with Content Surf, but I don't want to talk about that in detail.
Thank you, Hans. And lastly, we have Thomas from Wikipedia.
Oh, hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation for today's webinar. So I'm from Wikipedia. We are working like for 12 years with e-commerce solutions. So we start up with Magento and Typo 3. That was our beginning. And now on, we are working also with the Shopware. We are a Shopware partner. And from a few years, we are trying to be like a really good partner in Akeneo. So today I will present the Akeneo and also present the Shopware stuff for all you guys today, and I'm really open to discussion for today.
Thank you very much. That was the whole panel, and I'm looking forward to some great discussions. We have lined up 7 questions. We'll take them one by one, and I will try to coordinate a bit so everyone has some to say, and then we'll see how it goes. If anyone has questions along the way, please feel free to answer them in the chat or write them in the chat. And then if there's some good questions, we will see if we can find time to answer those as well. And let's go to the first question. So the first question we have is, why is PIM important? And why is it important in an e-commerce project? So from my side of the table, I've been working with e-commerce the last 15 years. And in the beginning, we never saw PIM. And today it's almost like every customer that comes to us says that we also need a PIM. So what changed and why is it important? I'll start asking Klaus from PIM Core to elaborate a little bit about why they think that PIM is important.
Thanks, Martin. So I'm already curious about the opinions of the others, because it's always hard to start first, right? But at least I see it, I think it just became an essential ingredient for a successful e-commerce project nowadays, because as I see, you know, in the beginning we were talking about e-commerce, then we were talking about m-commerce, about f-commerce, and so on. And I think it's like the discussion in the last years about, is it marketing, is it digital marketing? The same goes for commerce. I think we were mainly talking about omni-channel commerce business requirements nowadays. Also because of the expectations of every one of us. We want to get all the necessary information and want to have the possibility to do shopping in every channel we like to. So at the end of the day, as I see it, it's really about data consistency on the one hand, that became more and more important. And next to that, at the same time, we as customers expect more and more data at the end of the day within our complex customer journey. So the complexity of data that needs to be provided to the customer, gets more and more, has become higher. And as a result, you need some kind of single source of truth that allows to handle and manage that complexity of data modeling, where you can define it, where you also can secure and ensure data quality, data governance, but also the operational side, I think, became much more important. what we see in projects is that we have in the last years more and more projects where there's a huge amount of data sources for data onboarding. So it's not only just ERP, it has become so many different systems like PLM and different forms of MDM solutions out there which need to be integrated and data brought into the central platform. And yeah, sometimes we even see for bigger corporates that they have not only one system, but they have 5 or 6 or 7 systems within their tech stack of one solution domain, which yeah, also I would say increases the necessity and yeah, the importance of having this single source of truth for your product information. And I also see increased legal requirements in the last years popping up, yeah, especially for certain industries. And yeah, on an operational level, as I see it, but I'm very curious about your opinions, I see RevOps becoming more and more important, so that it's not about silos, also organizational silos anymore, but more and more about that integrated approach on the process, but also on a data management perspective in regards to sales, marketing, but also to service organizations. I would say that would be my opinion on the first row, and I'm really interested in your opinions as well.
Thank you very much. So if we then ask Bart as well, this is another platform from Ergonote, and I know if you look at PIM core versus Ergonote, there's 2 very different directions of going with a PIM, where exactly. Ergonote is a core PIM solution where it's only PIM and specialized for e-commerce, where PIM core more took an approach where it's an all-in-one solution, right?
Exactly.
So it could be interesting to see how Bart looks at this and on a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, classical mistake being on mute as something talking. Okay, so basically, yeah, definitely I would say that from our perspective, we see that PIM is most important because e-commerce started to be kind of multidimensional, and here dimensions have different factors, different aspects, and basically from one hand side, we have different channels. It's not simply our own e-commerce which we are running. It's e-commerce, it's marketplace, it's other channels where product information need to be structured and shaped in the proper way and managed. This is one of aspects. Second, what we see very important aspect, dimension of markets. So basically there are markets definition, market requirements, country-wise, language-wise, and this is something where sometimes pure e-commerce platform is not enough for the requirements of the customers. Third point, I would mention architecture. So I would say approach for architecture evolved during the years, and what we see, and here I think is kind of a slight differences how we approach this comparing to PIM core, is that basically we want to be precisely the PIM solution, which is part of composable architecture with the APIs around it, and I would say be able from the day one to connect to other solutions, which are precisely very good in those areas. And I would say last topic, which at least from us, our side in Ergonote is important is, and we see this as a kind of backbone, kind of DNA of functionality, which we are providing. It's a team. It's teams which are working on the content. Those teams are growing. Those teams need to be managed as such, and the operational work around it, workflows, passing the work from copywriters to photographers to translators and so on. It's something which we see very important aspect of it, and we want to be able to support those aspects, to support operational management of working with the content, with enriching the content, and we see this as a some kind of addition of the functionality on top of e-commerce platforms. E-commerce platforms have also, I would say, very important aspect which need to be covered, but we want to focus on supporting the content teams as we see this as a kind of important aspect in regards to product information.
I totally see your point, Bart, and that's also a main reason of building PIM core as an all-in-one approach. Because of that, you mentioned that teams are working together and the product is never that solely structured data, but it always consists of content, editorial content, media assets as well, different forms of information. And that was the main reason behind PIMcore providing this as part of one integrated solutions. But I totally see your point that it's really at the end of the day allowing a team collaborating around certain aspects of product information.
Yep, definitely agree.
Thank you very much. I think it leads a bit into the question number 2. So I'll quickly skip this one because even though this is a big topic, I think that question 2 will lead a bit more into it, and that could be interesting to see from the agency side how they see it. Because question number 2 is, who is the target customer for PIM? Is there a specific pattern, or is it some verticals, or is it a project size? Bart mentioned specifically this with there's teams now that has to work together, or many languages. But do you see that as a place where it's only the bigger companies that are looking for PIM, or is it also the smaller vendors? And I could be interested to see Hans first from one drop to hear how it is on the agency side.
So what we experience is, of course, every bigger client already knows that he has the need for a PIM in order to work properly with his data. Small and medium customers tend to not know what a PIM actually is or what it can do for you. They usually start using Shopware to maintain their product data, and then they figure out, oh, okay, we are updating, let's say, a complete category of products. We need to change the wording, and then there's somebody clicking around in the Shopware admin, and he doesn't even know which product he already edited, because it's like you have a virtual to-do list, but it is not visible. There is no task that you can accomplish. That is actually what PIMs are good for. They give you to-dos, or basically they are a project management for maintaining data projects. So maintaining and updating your product data is what you consider a repeatable process. You always need to refine data. You add new attributes, you change pictures, but if you don't know which products you have already touched, it gets a nightmare, and you just start over and over again, and you will end up in an endless loop. It comes even worse if the company grows and you have then 1 or 2 people working at the product data. In the end, they are working against each other because they can't negotiate, they can't deal with the other guy, that they are not sitting next to each other. Oh, I'm now editing product A. Oh, I have modified product B. Yeah, but I'm currently modifying product B, and if I click save, your change is lost. So this is something that I say every client that has more than 2 employees, more than 1 employee taking care of product data, or who has the need to update his product data regularly, should know what a PIM is and should consider using a PIM. Otherwise, you will get trapped.
Okay, so you see actually more the need for PIM is on how many employees you have, or how many tasks, not as much as a vertical, or how many products to have, or how many categories to have, or languages.
Well, as soon as you start working with translations, it's always the requirement, is my translation up to date with my original content? And Shopware can't answer you that. It's bad for products. It comes even worse if you're talking about CMS functionality in Shopware, but we're dealing with products today. So if there is a change in your original language, you should trigger a translation process, or at least have a to-do somewhere for the translator to work on the translations. This is always a big topic. And we also have requirements like, oh, I would like to prepare my products. I would like to collect the data, take pictures and everything before I put them online. So yeah, you could enter the product in Shopware, having it deactivated, but then you end up searching your products that you need to fill out completely, and that's also a big mess. So we are really talking to our clients from the side of, do you know that working with product data is a day-to-day business? that it is a kind of a project that you need to manage by yourselves and that you need a proper tool to deal with it. Talking about mass data editing, in Shopware 6.4, there's finally a feature to edit some products in bulk. Finally, well, it kind of works sometimes, somehow, but you never know how. In PIM, you always have a optimized user interface that gives you the possibility to quickly edit a batch of products without breaking your system, because the PIMs tend to do that asynchronously, but Shopware does it synchronously, so your database performance will decrease dramatically if you're trying to change a lot of products. So this is just, usually the Shopware administration is misused as a PIM in the beginning, and then later on you figure out, oh yeah, that's not working somehow, and you need to export the data, import it into a PIM, and then you have consistency issues and so on. So we recommend it almost for every client who has to change their data regularly, who has translations or whatever. So I think it will become an essential part of future e-commerce products, that you will always have your, we call it triangle of success. You have an ERP system, you have a shop, and you have a PIM.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of saying the triangle with the ERP and the PIM and the e-commerce. How do you see that, Thomas? You're also on the agency side, and I guess have you seen the same thing as Hans is mentioning here, or do you see it a different way?
Okay, so this question for me. So from my perspective, important fact is if you have a process for providing data for the products, and you have separate people for that, and actually you need a tool for doing that, and it's separated from the e-commerce part. We know a lot of like stuff from the agency way that, for example, sometimes products were disabled by excuse, for example, by some person, because he wasn't like he didn't knew that, for example, he will disable products on the real e-commerce site. So from my perspective, it's really good way to separate those systems from the e-commerce, because like the PIM is, as the past speaker said, it's really optimized for doing the products and doing everything like that. And the good part is that actually I think that if more PIM instances will come to the market, the cost of the ownership of the PIMs will be smaller and smaller. So I'm saying that maybe next year or maybe few years, like the cost of the PIM will be really low, and with the microservices and a lot of integrations, it will be like plug and play to install the PIM for example, for the e-commerce system, and this will lower up the cost of that, and more users will be using it. So yeah, I'm seeing that this is like good requirement, not only for the e-commerce companies, but also like for the companies which they are dealing with data for like catalogs, for offline sales and all of that, for like POS systems and all of that. So I think that we are like in the different times with the managing data products, and yeah, and I think that every year like the barrier is lowering and more companies can afford that tool.
Okay, thank you very much. We also have Stefan with us here, that is from PIM vendors, that has a more broad overview for all the platforms. And I know there's a lot of PIM solutions out there that is a specific platform for a specific vertical, where they specialized in fashion or something else. How do you see the market, Stefan, and when do you recommend to going for a PIM solution that is specific for a vertical, or when do you propose to go for a more broad one like PIMcore or Ergonote?
Good question. Well, I would say what we see in the market is that there has been an evolution basically from larger enterprises, mainly B2C retail, has sort of evolved from those who were using PIM previously, has evolved to a more broader sort of range of the market, and other places in the value chain like wholesale and manufacturers, brands, also different verticals, fashion, automotive. The oil spill of PIM is widening. And I think it is, just as Klaus said, it is problem-based, right? So they have a challenge, and that challenge is driven by the digitalization of the value chain, the complexity of the products that is increasing. We need more product data, more attributes, more, I would say, more rich content. So 3D models, more images, videos, and that problem is sort of driving the market to chase solutions. And I think PIM is a great solution that is often found. And enterprises knew that there was such a thing like PIM. I think the small to medium enterprise market that we are now seeing growing rapidly is mainly problem driven, and they discover PIM almost by accident. But that is not sort of specific to a certain vertical or to a certain market. We see the whole market, especially now with COVID and the sort of forced e-commercialization of many different players, that there's a huge growth in PIM. And specifically to answer your question about should you choose for a niche, or should you choose for a niche-driven PIM or a more sort of broad PIM, it really depends, as always, on your requirements. So we already discussed, for example, architectural requirements. What we see is it's always a sort of puzzle piece that you are building together with the vendors on one end and the customer on the other end, and what you need. Yeah, it really depends on what your ERP does. If you have a separate pricing system, what you want to do in your e-commerce system, and that is something I think is currently what we're seeing in PIM. And every PIM has sort of its own history and its own focus and its own strengths and weaknesses when it comes to being the right puzzle piece for the right customer.
Thank you. Before we tap into the next question, I can already show it now, but which is that how can PIM improve your everyday work with Shopware and generally with e-commerce? I think everyone here around the table already had been touching in on where it's improving your daily work, the way of having to manage products. But I could also like to dig a bit deeper down, because PIM is more than just product information management. What I see today, I think Stefan mentioned 3D models. There's a lot of sort of like making catalogs and having channels that works offline. So now we have Bart here as well that is really focused on the channel that is called e-commerce, but PIMcore is more for all channels. When you see a PIM implemented, is it always based on that you have a problem like you said, or is it also because a lot of older companies are coming to the fact now that they want to go online to have e-commerce, also because of COVID, and they are already strong with the ERP and the PIM, and then they are just building an e-commerce on top of that? I guess there's a bit of both, but I could be interesting to hear how Bart sees it from his perspective in Ergonote.
Yeah, so definitely it's always a classical answer. It depends, but I think what we see in some part of the market is that basically PIM is often chosen by customers who already run e-commerce in some way, but they are developing this channel because of few reasons, because of COVID, because of entering new markets, because of rising the new categories and so on. And then PIM is kind of necessity in regards to the architecture and the process which you will be entering, and those aspects which Hans mentions, that basically collaboration of the team, because your market number is growing, your product base is growing, your team is growing, you need to have something which will be useful for managing the operational work. So I think is in many cases the PIM is kind of a necessary ingredient of the architecture which you are building or rebuilding, because often we have cases where sometimes customers have already done kind of monolithic approach, and they rethinking this right now with the modern approach, with the more composable commerce, and decoupling of the current system, or changing the system architecture. This is the point in time where the consideration about the PIM is very highly visible, because those aspects which are addressed by PIM are already identified. And big part of the customers, not always, but big part, they are aware that they need to have a piece which will be good for the product information management and all process around it. Yeah.
Could you try to be a bit more concrete on some specific things where PIM improves the everyday work of working as an e-commerce manager?
Definitely. So definitely this kind of aspects are kind of managing of the, for example, completeness of the data for the product. So for example, process of the completing the data before releasing for particular channel. So you need to ensure as a e-commerce manager or content manager that you have all the data necessary for particular channel, or your e-commerce or marketplaces entered in the proper way. Those requirements for the data sets are different per channel. So basically you need to manage in the proper way to ensure that, okay, for particular channel, you have a set of attributes which is necessary, for example, for Amazon or for your own e-com. I would say on the other aspects of the improvement of the particular functionality, which also what has mentioned, this mass actions on the shopper. It is possible, but it's always will be better managed in the, I would say, software which is intended to do so. So mass action on the product data, which is, I would say, I would even risk the statement very often for the customers. It's better to do this in PIM rather than directly in the e-commerce platform. So this kind of aspects is definitely something which very highly improving daily operational work, and probably it will be very hard to achieve in the e-commerce platform as such.
Thank you. Hans, you also talked a bit into this, how you see it with the customers. Do you have some concrete examples from customers where you saw a big improvement from working in Shopware or e-commerce platform and then moving to PIM, and how that improved their everyday work life?
I'd like to tell you about a very specific example that we recently had. Maybe some of you know the social commerce feature from Shopware, where you can export your products to Google and Shopping and Facebook and so on. If you are exporting your products, there is a mandatory categorization from Google or Facebook themselves, which you need to maintain. This is not necessary information for your shop at all. It is just for this export. The problem is this category tree is huge. It's hard to maintain. You don't have an overview. You don't have an integration into Shopware. You could copy around a massive amount of numbers in the product. If you would do that in Shopware and maintain that later on, let's say you have 10,000 products, it will probably cost you like 2 weeks or something like that. If you have a PIM system, what you actually do is you import a second category tree, you're overlaying it, and then you're just doing mass assignment. You're saying, okay, I have the products in that category, drag, drop them into that category tree. So it is a matter of hours to get that additional data complete, full, up and running for that specific channel. And this is a very concrete example that recently happened to one of our customers, which was the point why they introduced a PIM, because saving so much time for the maintenance of the product data, it was worth the PIM project for this one example. And later on, they are saving money by improving their daily work with the product data. I think we will see more of those examples in the future. Recently, there was a change with product pricing. Shopware sent a newsletter like a few days ago where you have a new field that is basically mandatory if you have promotional prices. So if you need to maintain a new field for all of your products, who is organizing that? Who is assigning to-dos to the product managers and so on? The only way to manage that properly is in a PIM. And I think in 2023 or 24 there will be the change in accessibility inside the European Union if you want to do e-commerce. Maintaining product data for accessibility has completely different requirements regarding data quality. You need to have a version of simple language for your product description. So it is basically the product description that you already have, but you have to simplify the wording, you have to shorten the sentences, you need to drill it down at all. So what will happen, what I think is going to happen, you will have plugins for the PIM which have some kind of indicator which is saying how simple your simple language is. So your editor is quick on dealing with this data, and then you can quickly modify it, export it into Shopware. If you do that in a PIM, you save so much time, which is by the end of the day money. And if the client gives us a small portion of that money, he will have a PIM, he will save money later on. And I think if I say to a customer, hey, well, you know, your return of invest is within a week or within a month, there's no way he's gonna discuss that with us. He's saying, when can I have it?
Yeah, and I think everyone loves concrete examples like this, where you really see the benefit of it, and where you also can show the customer that investing in this will already solve this problem, and the cost of that is already earned in just by this. And I think Thomas also has some good examples, so let's hear from him as well. You just have to unmute first.
Sorry for that. I was just like writing like some examples from like past time that we were implementing Akineo and the Shopware. So the one part which is like really common thing when you building up e-commerces, especially like for the retailers, which they have some different producers and some different distributors that they provided the products for them, is actually the imports of the products and data syndication. That's actually a big issue when, for example, you have products from, let's say, 3 or 4 suppliers, when you need to like connect those data together before you like put it in the e-commerce. And this is something typical for the, for example, FMCG market, or it's typical for example, for the, I'm not sure, like building materials for the construction site, where you need to like connect data from five companies, and then after like doing the syndication and checking all the details, put it to the e-commerce. So that's I think the place where it's easy to, where we can do it actually. The other part is actually using the rules and rule builder and automation of the rules is actually really good. One of the really good tool in the Akineo, where you can have some automation of the putting data and attributes and in descriptions, and also where you can, for example, use tools like AX semantics, where you can like generate the descriptions in some let's say AI way to have a like good content for the SEO. So that's something where I think it's not good to put it in the e-commerce, but it's really easy to put it for the PIM projects, and then you have really good quality of the data. I think the last thing which we found out in the e-commerce development is actually that you can have a parallel implementation of the PIM and parallel implementation of the e-commerce. So like the effect of the e-commerce will be really faster because you can do it like in the 2 teams, and this is what we are doing, right? Many times we are starting up the project of the PIM, and we start a project of the Magento or for example Shopware, do it parallel. And I think that before the PIM, let's say era, the data was not so important. The more important was like the customer experience, the features, the integrations, and the data was, okay, you've got here an e-commerce, just input data and everything will be fine. So this is the last thing, like what I'd like to say, that the whole process of the thinking about the data, the structure, the product structure, the collaboration is something big advantage for the end client in the process of the implementation of PIM.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next question, I just maybe Stefan has something to add here as well, or could also be Klaus that has some good concrete examples.
Yeah, I think we actually had a customer that had a marketplace with over 140 suppliers, and they all sort of manage the data through Google Sheets, a spreadsheet in Excel. And I think what we all discussed is like complexity, error reduction, manual labor. I think those are all the steps, all this sort of process and onboarding. That is where PIM really shines, right? So that is where you can really help. And instead of having 140 different Excel sheets that all can break and that all are connected with different scripts to your e-commerce system and to your ERP, you can have just one sort of, I wouldn't say golden record, but one central place where you manage your product information, and also where you connect to all the different channels input and all the different output channels as well.
I would totally agree on this. So I also see that focus on the process level of and the life cycle of product information at the end of the day, and it starts with the onboarding, but not always for every vertical, I would say so, because it's also very different to the industry. Because when you're a manufacturer and you're focused on a really small product portfolio, just having, I don't know, a product launch of 5 to 10 products with some variants every year, you have a total different scenario to being a retailer who needs to import every day thousands of products, articles down to SKU level. So this really varies, and I think a PIM allows to implement those different scenarios. And this is where I also see a bit of I have a different opinion to Thomas, as he mentioned that he sees PIM becoming a commodity, because I see that point that for certain verticals, PIM will become a commodity, and it allows to SaaS with all the microservices first and API first, SaaS first approach, allowing a really quick start and a ramp up for setting up your product database. But I think you were discussing, Hans mentioned certain specific things about accessibility and so on. And what we see in our projects is that we have so many specific individual customer business, but also technical requirements that it needs to, that we also have the need for certain clients to allow a high form of customization in regards to processes of onboarding, data mapping, data cleansing, data quality management, and all those core processes related to product information. So I think it highly depends on the vertical and the business scenarios, and also setting up that business model. I think we come to that in some minutes later when we discuss about this project phases. It's all about understanding the business model, the data model of the client at the end of the day, which is just unique. I've never seen the same data model for two clients. I don't know if you have, but in fact, I've never seen something like this.
If I may add to this, maybe to refer to one aspect which Stefan mentioned, this example where a customer was working on Excel or Google Sheet. It's I think that we know that it's very common, and this is something which we see that kind of value for customer is that, okay, we might provide functionality which is enriching this in terms of dictionaries, data model, and so on. But in many cases, end users who are used to working with Google Sheet and Excel are looking for the similar experience. And this is something which I think where PIM came up with some kind of in-between solution where we are working on the data model, which is proper, which is set with the dictionaries and so on, but still without providing kind of Excel-like experience that there is a grid. We could drag and drop. We could basically copy paste from one side to another, but we have kind of Excel-like experience with the Excel on steroids functionality, let's say so. Yeah, that basically we cannot forget about the end user who are in many cases very often used to work with Excel file. So PIM solution, which is not it will not be addressed with the ecom solution, but it might be addressed with the PIM solution that this experience is provided, but the functionality is more coherent and more stable in regard to the data model. Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've seen. The import-export function in both Shopware and Magento and all platforms is really bad. So if that is better in the PIM, where you can actually pull out data, modify it in Excel, and import again, because there's a lot of customers out there that it's just really hardcore at Excel. And if you're really hardcore at Excel, nothing beats that when you're having to change a lot of data.
I think that's very interesting issue in regards to PIM itself or the whole solution domain, because in fact you have different types of users handling, juggling data. And then it really depends on the scenario. If you have a marketer, for example, juggling once a week 2 attributes or 2 content descriptions, or if it's a data steward changing, I don't know, thousands of records within some minutes. And you have to find a good balance with providing different views, for example, to allow a good user experience for all those different types of users using your PIM backend. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges, serving the users at the end of the day in an appropriate way, providing helpers, but providing not too complex user interface, providing consistency in user interface. And I think that's always a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that leads quite good to the next question, which is where we go a bit more into how to implement PIM. And I know there's a lot of different ways here as well to go on that, and both the complex ways and also just a standard plug and play integration. But it could be interesting to if we start out by hearing from the 2 agencies. So if we start out with Thomas this time, to hear how he sees in a PIM implementation and how big of a project is it. Just have to unmute again.
I'm sorry that because the kids are in the home and actually they're making some noise, so that's why I'm muting. So the Akeneo as a product, what we are provide for the clients is actually there's a lot of thinking in Akeneo about the process of the implementation of the PIM, and also the processes of how the products should be like structured and everything like that. It's like the whole solution is called like the product experience management. And actually we are lucky because there's a lot of insight knowledge about it in Akeneo. So we are also, as a partner, we're trying to use these best practices for our clients. Like, I think the most important thing is with the PIMs, with every PIM, is actually that you are building up the agnostic solution. So you're not trying to build like additional module for the ERP or like for e-commerce or something like that. This is like huge mistake done in beginning from the clients where they're trying to do some, let's say, additional system with the descriptions and all of that, and they're not putting PIM as a like the master data product. And I think this is the most important thing. So when you actually after like setting up this with the client that this should be like the diagnostic system, then in Akeneo we've got some like phases which they are trying to do with the clients in the workshop. So we think that most important thing is the catalog structure. So when you are like discussing about the channels of the data, when you're discussing about the categories of the data, of the products, and you are thinking about it, then you can go forward to the product structures. When you are thinking about the families or like say attribute sets, like in the different, like in different PIMs is like different name for that, or like the classes, like in any other PIMs. So we are thinking about it and the attributes and trying to build up with the clients the whole the final, like, let's say, solutions with the product structure. And afterwards you can go forward to the workflows, and to the workflows not only with the product data inside the PIM, but you can also work with the workflows with other systems. So in that case you can discuss different integrations with the other systems and like the collaborations with this data. And then like the final phase is actually the teaching of the client how we would work with the product. But in the Akeneo, like the most important is that we're not trying to build up every time, like, let's say the custom solutions for the client. We are trying to use as much as we can from the basic product, and we're trying to provide Akineo as a SaaS, or sometimes as a PaaS, a platform that will be not so connected with the software, but more will be connected with the solutions. And we're trying to build up additional features, which for example, Klaus said that there's many custom things for the clients. We're trying to build up as a custom models and as app additionals for the Akineo. But we're trying to push the client, and also I think this is really important to not build up only for them solutions, because in many cases we found out that actually more simple solutions are better, and actually the client before the PIM implementations, they don't have experience in the PIM, and that's also our big thing in the projects, that we are not only like the software company, but we are really important as a consulting company to provide the information how the PIM should work. So let's say for our clients that this process will be for you better, and also to keep these processes, to check these processes after implementation of PIM, if it works, if it's okay, and maybe some additional things, because the knowledge of the PIMs of the markets is really low. I think this is happening every year, like more people understands the PIM solutions, but still the experience of this kind of products is really low. And this is, I think, our work of every PIM partner from every solutions, that we should give our clients more and more knowledge about the best practices of working with the PIMs, and not trying to every day, like let's say think up how to create a new wheel, right? Like the wheel is on the table. So yeah, that's pretty, like that's really well documented in Akineo, and we're trying to use the best practices from also other partners from the Akineo.
Thank you. Before we just jump to Hans and hear about his way of thinking, I can see Klaus has a hand up, so let's just go to Klaus first and then back to Hans afterwards.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I see that point, what Thomas was saying about providing an out-of-the-box solution in regards to providing a standard product with a fast ramp-up, and try to avoid customization. And for PIMCO, you know, I think those who know PIMCO know that we were built as a basis, as a framework in the beginnings, but today we are really following a triple play strategy. So on the one hand, we provide a framework that allows high customization, which is done by partners, where our partners consult, advise their clients, do the conceptual work in regards to data modeling and so on. All the things Thomas mentioned. But we also see the necessity to provide that product, that out-of-the-box product, by providing a SaaS solution since 2021. And so by providing these two commercial edition next to community edition, by the way, thank you guys for contributing to such a great software out there. We always start by discussing, what do you mean by you want to have a PIM? Because what we see in the market is, as Thomas mentioned, absolutely that some of our prospects don't have the right clue or the right info about what can you do with PIM. And when some are talking about PIM, we ask, do you also mean handling asset management? Do you mean handling assets? Or do you mean also print publishing? Do you mean e-commerce integration and so on? So we try to find out that long-term perspective, also on the strategic perspective, what they want to achieve, because this is for us the basis, understanding the client's needs to provide the appropriate solution approach for them. So there is that framework approach for sure, but there's also the SaaS approach for those who really need to ramp up very fast, very quickly. And so at the end of the day, it's really about understanding the client's business and technical requirements, and also their existing tech stack. What do they have in their backend as backbone systems? For example, when it's about data integration, do they have an ETL solution, data integration solution, where they already do data consolidation, data mapping, and so on? Do we need some kind of data onboarding, and so on and so on? So understanding the core scenarios, understanding the pain points of the clients, and then moving forward with the right appropriate solution approach.
Thank you. Let's just go back to Hans then and hear how he sees it from his agency and how they implement PIM. I'm really curious about also, one thing is that the platform can be a SaaS platform and it can start live quickly. But you also mentioned earlier the triangle, you have an ERP and you have an e-commerce solution. Integrating to those are normally not plug and play, are they?
No, they're not. You have to always ensure that the single point of truth is in the correct system. So talking about prices and stock levels, these are attributes that have nothing to do in your PIM. They don't belong there. They are quickly changing data. They are controlled differently. For example, talking about complex pricing engines, that's something a ERP is good for and is pretty good at doing that. If you're starting to adapt your PIM to do that as well, you will always fail. You will build up technical debts that will cost you a lot of money later on in maintenance and updates and so on. The problem is always, if you let's talk Shopware. You're trying to send a product to Shopware. You have mandatory fields. You always need to have a price. So if you start from the PIM and you transfer the product to Shopware, you can't transfer a product to Shopware without a price. So you always transfer it with like 9,999 euro, 99 cents. And then the ERP kicks in and overrides the price. That's just a typical process how integrating more than one system works. You will always have somebody at the client's company saying, oh, that doesn't look good. Why? If the customer sees that 9,999 euros, probably they're gonna freak out. Yeah, but if the product is initially transferred to Shopware, it is deactivated. Your client will never see it. If the ERP system kicks in and transfers the actual price and the stock level, then the product gets activated. But these are details that you as an implementation partner or agency need to ensure that they work properly. So you will not only model the product data and the processes themselves, but also the system integration and also consulting and educating your customer what is happening when. Because if this is a black box and doing some black magic, which will transfer data from A to B and partial data from A to B, there will always be questions or confusion. So you need to tackle that in the first few hours or days of your project, if you're integrating more than one system. But if that works out great, it usually does. But you will always have to deal with some decisional conflicts, let's say. Usually the users of the PIM is the marketing department or let's say product management. But if you have some critical people at the clients who work with the ERP system who say, we need to immediately stop selling that product. They need to have a block functionality in their ERP system, which will wipe out the product from the shop. Usually the visibility is controlled in the PIM. So they would need to run over to marketing and tell them, please remove the products from the shop. Well, if you have worked with bigger clients, you know cross-department communication doesn't work as you would expect it. They usually communicate over you. So you want to give him this emergency button, stop selling, maybe as well. But you need to inform marketing department that you stopped selling this product. Otherwise, they will do promotions or campaigning or something like that. So it's always about bringing people and use cases together and figuring out which functionality is really needed in which system, but you want to keep the focus on what a system is good on. Shopware is good at selling, a PIM is good at maintaining product data, and ERP is good at managing stock and price.
Thank you. And I think Bart was the first one with the hand up, and then afterwards we take Stefan.
Yeah, two comments from my side in regards to this specialization. I fully agree that it's very often the tendency that what we see from the customer that, okay, we are discussing about the PIM, but okay, let's maybe pricing put in there. And this is something where, at least from my perspective, I say this very, very strictly, the PIM is for the product information management. Definitely pricing is important, but managing pricing is not something which need to be addressed with that PIM. There are, I would say, functionality and systems which are intended to do this. The first part of the comment. The second one, what you said at the beginning, Martin, I was joking that sometimes the vendor and the agency or implementator perspective is that not always something which is out of the box is plug and play. There is a work behind, between that sometimes the standard functionality for each actionable implementation need to be adjusted for at least slightly. And this is something which is which need to be remembered during the implementation.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks, Paul. And then Stefan.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think we're having a very internal discussion here, but I think like where does the implementation of a PIM start is what the end consumer needs, right? So we need to look at what does the end consumer need from a product information perspective, and then translate that back to the data model and what the PIM does and how that fits in the architecture. I just wanted to add that since we had this super internal discussion with all kinds of valid points on roles a PIM plays, role a pricing engine plays, how the process looks from PIM and publishing on an e-commerce platform. But I do think that it starts outside of your own organization. It starts with your end consumer or your customer, the customer's customer, and how they are best served, and then translate that to all the internal toolings and specifically the data model where the implementation starts, in my opinion. So all valid points, but I just want to add that, yeah, it starts really with the customer.
So Stefan, when it comes to you and ask for help to find the right PIM platform, what do you propose them to do? Let's say a customer comes and says, we are in the middle of changing our ERP. We are quite far along with that. And we also want a new e-commerce solution because it's built on an old platform and we won't integrate that to the new ERP system. And we're also thinking about implementing a PIM. In which steps do you take? Do you take the ERP and the PIM first and make this work, and then you put on the e-commerce afterwards, or do you start out with e-commerce and then implement the PIM later on?
Well, that's a very good question. I think it's almost a philosophical question. Where do you start? It depends, obviously, on the process. So in a way, I would say it starts with the customer. So if you're also implementing e-commerce, I would say pick one that best serves your end consumer. And that also depends on your other channels, right? Because e-commerce is not your only channel. If you're selling 80% of your products through a marketplace like Amazon, then maybe your own e-commerce system is not the most important piece, but it's the PIM. And also back to like, where is a product born? That is also important in that whole process. So is a product created in your PIM, maybe by suppliers even pushing data to you, or are you with your own design team creating products and publishing those to your PIM to be enriched, and then publishing those again to your downstream channels, to a data pool or to a marketplace or to your customers. So as always, it depends on your unique situation. But I would say, again, like start with the customer's needs, your end consumer's needs, and then translate back to your own organization. Yeah.
Thanks.
In my experience, if you're at the question, where do you start? The first question you're asking, have you already started creating products in the ERP and do they belong to a warehouse? If the answer is yes, you have lost. There's no way you can change a product structure later on. Let's say they have decided that a product variant consists of, let's say trousers, for example. They have a width, they have a height, and they have color. So if they decided that color is also a variant dimension in the ERP system, there's no way you can split that up in your PIM, keep that in sync, and deal with now that color is out of stock and everything else, because they have already decided on the structure of their warehouse, how they are going to work with physical products. And if that is already fixed, you can't change it. So that way, then you're only trying to build a user interface for working with something that already exists. Otherwise, you would need to throw away everything that the ERP team has already done and start entering products from the beginning. So you should always start with your customers saying, how does your product look like? How do variants look like? And where do you split? Where do you stop saying this is the same product or product family? When is it a different product? And that needs to be in sync across the e-commerce platform, across the PIM, and across the ERP system, or you will end up in hell.
So you actually see the best place of starting a product journey is actually in the PIM. If you could choose, if you say it's a complete new company that don't have any systems, you would start the product journey in PIM and then move it to ERP and to e-commerce.
I would say the data model, if I can translate your thoughts, Hans. But how would you say? How would you answer Martin's question?
You start with the data model. If the data model is started in the ERP or if it's started in the PIM, it doesn't matter. But it needs to be modeled in a way that it can be consistent across systems and that it works for all the systems.
Yeah. Good. Let's move on to the next question. I think we already touched about this, but this is again, where do we see the return of investment? And again, I think many of the people here as well want to know a bit more about how expensive it is. And I know you cannot put a number on it because that's different from project to project. But how big of a project is PIM implementation normally? Is it compared to a size of building an e-commerce solution? Is it compared to building the ERP? And what will the effect be of it? It's clearly to hear from you what you're telling me and what you're told in the former questions, that is there's a big return of investment if you do it the right way, and you save a lot of time, at least from working with products, and that is also calculated into that. But how big do you think those projects are normally? Maybe Thomas and Hans can answer this best because they're on the agency side.
Okay, so what I can say that like the difference from the e-commerce projects and the PIM projects is actually that in the PIM projects there's like more consulting and more training, and there's really bigger amounts of the workshops with the clients. So the cost of the PIM implementation is like, let's say, sometimes it's a half of consulting, sometimes it's a half of actually implementation and working of the integrators that actually put data to the PIM and also created the integrations and all of that. Because if you go to the PIM, you're actually going across the whole organizations, from the, for example, master data, from the catalog, from the quality team, from the e-commerce team. You can sometimes need to go with the warehousing team to have all requirements for all people inside the organizations together to have it in the PIM. So this is something, let's say, different than the e-commerce, because in many cases you are talking only with the e-commerce team and actually discussing all of that, and they're actually doing additional work internally. So this is the one thing. The other part in the PIMs is sometimes really expensive is the data syndication and getting all data together, and not in a manual way, but actually in some case of the automatic way, because in many cases it's impossible to do it by hand by hand, like to recreate the data, but actually you need to have some, let's say, external platforms or a lot of rules to getting like data together and have some kind of a rules to do that. The other part, actually important thing, is that if more client is experienced, and actually we see that those projects are cheaper, because from the beginning they knew that the MVP version of the PIM is really important, and we are not going for the edge cases because that's a really tricky part in the PIMs. There was like example with the trousers, right? Like in every PIM solutions, sometimes there's a magic product with really different way of acting, and the client is really focusing on this one product that we should have this implemented. And actually, from my perspective, in many cases it's not important. The most important is like to go forward with the data model for the most common products for the client, and this is the focus of the project, not to like paying for like a really custom product which is sold some few times, or maybe you can recreate the data model and say, okay, we want to have this product different way. Let's say we can go put this product from outside the warehouse and, for example, again recreate it in the warehouse, so we can do it from the scratch. So in the end, like those projects could be as big as the e-commerce as a price, but the investment is not only in the product, but investment is the changing of the way how the company works with the products. And actually the earnings from this kind of the products is actually that in many persons from the organization, if they need some data, they've got data in the system. They don't need to, like, for example, create an email, hey, I want to have the data information about this products. And what does it mean for the companies currently? For example, if there's a new sales channel, and for example, the company said, okay, we want to go for the marketplace, or we want to go for some, like, let's say, other partner, or like we would like to have a drop shipping partner. Like, it's really easy to go there. Of course, there's like some cases like the attributes that you need to have mapped with the marketplace and all of that, but actually your data is ready. You're not like, okay, now we need to recreate all data because we're going forward somewhere. So yeah, that's pretty it. So like the earning from this investment is, I think, really fast, because like the sales channel is changing, like the market is changing, and that's the important thing.
Thank you, Thomas.
The good thing is, talking about Akeneo, you will always, most of the times you can start with the community edition, so there's no initial ramp-up cost, license fee, or something else. You can get up a MVP very, very quickly, and you can demonstrate it to the client with, let's say, 90% of real-world data. So you can convince the decision makers at the company that this is the right way to go very, very quickly. You know the saying that the last 10% of the project are 90% of the work. That is basically what Thomas was just explaining. It's always details. So you can get up, let's say, a Akeneo community edition with some basic customer data in a matter of hours, maybe 1 or 2 days. And then you struggle with details and so on. But talking about a return of invest, if you can ask the question, how many people at the client are currently working on product data, you can always estimate that you will reduce the amount of people necessary by half. And as we know, the most expensive thing for companies is people.
Yeah.
So actually, we had a project once where it was a big PIM implementation with web to print and integration and so on, and it replaced 18 employees. They had a department which was called the copy and paste department. They were copying over data from Excel to Word to InDesign to Illustrator to do layouting and graphics. It was amazing. And after a year of work, okay, it was a really, really complex project, but a year of work of one of our people replaced 18 of them.
Wow. Yeah, and that's, I don't know what you take it per hour, but at least I'm pretty sure it was a return on investment quite quickly for them, replacing 18 people.
I would like also to one additional thing that from like 2 of our clients, which they are actually selling a lot of products through the e-commerce, they said that the biggest earnings from the PIM was actually that they could put the 2 times more products every week than it was before, and actually it was making like a little bit additional sales, and they seen it because they could, in the same team, like they could more products. So like you can count it like as a 2 times, for example, smaller team, or the same team can, for example, do it like to multiply times products than actually it was before, right? So that's our experience in the PIMs, right? Also.
Yeah, Klaus, I think you also had a question. Or
yeah, what I would like to add is that I totally agree on all those comments and opinions. What I would like to add is that I see there is this operative side, this operational side about cost reductions in personnel and optimization of processes and so on. But I think when we talk about ROI, it's mainly about the qualitative factors and the possibilities, the chances those you make possible using a PIM. And the moment executive team, the executive sponsor who is always needed, when you don't have an executive sponsor for a PIM project, you can go home from the beginning because it will fail. But when the executive team recognizes what is possible by using a PIM system, it can be really become a successful change for the whole organization, as Thomas said as well, because at the end of the day, it's really about changing the mindset and the way an organization ticks and works, how they think and act and work together at the end of the day, and how they also can get into new markets, launch new markets, for example. I think one of the most important things is quality, data quality. When you understand as a company how important data quality to your end customer is in regards to consistency and what it also can cost if you don't do this the right way. So if you have inconsistency in your data over not only one channel, but over 10 or 15 channels, that really can cost a lot of money when we talk about return in commerce, for example. And you can ensure that you have the right sizes of your shoes and all that stuff available and availability and all you mentioned, totally right. I think it's much more about the qualitative factors, but at the end of the day, these are the hardest thing inside the organization to measure as an external one. And when you come into a company, no one, at least in my experience, would say the percentage of how does that bring to our revenue, for example. How would that add up? If we can increase our revenue by just 1% or 2% or 3% by providing a better data quality, for example. These are huge numbers, huge figures at the end of the day for so many companies. But this is the hardest thing, as I see, to discuss this openly and transparently inside the organization.
Thank you very much.
If I may add one thing, maybe on top of what colleagues said, that in terms of what PIM could bring in ROI, of course, this cost reduction factor are important, that you reduce the costs which are related to data, but also I would say proper data within the PIM might be very good trigger for improving two aspects: time to market in regards to products and the topics, how fast you could release the product or enter new market. This is one aspect, and second aspect is that properly entered data of the product might be very good trigger, for example, to reduce returns. For example, that if you measure your product properly, you have this data properly entered within the PIM, it will influence how you could personalize your offer in e-com, meaning you will influence the level of returns which you get from it. So basically, this kind of aspects are very often, in my opinion, missed. We are focusing on the cost reduction, but we are forgetting how this proper data might be the very good trigger for improving the revenue streams as such. Yeah,
makes sense. That's definitely. At least I fall in that trap many times to look at cost reduction when it comes to PIM, because on the e-commerce side it's easier to look into how much more revenue you can gain, but on the PIM side, because it's a bit behind, you don't see the same factors. But I can definitely see both for returns, bit of data, and there's many places where you can definitely also increase the revenue.
And the more, as I see, the more these three core organizations, marketing, sales, and service, are working closely together, the better it gets and the better it comes visible. So the possibility and the chances of PIM, how to use, not only when we're talking about commerce, but you also have to think of service organizations supporting your clients every day, cross upselling possibilities, and so on and so on. So tons of different additional opportunities, which you totally miss when you have this in silos and not available and not consistent.
Thank you. Next question, I think I'll put to Stefan, because it's like, when should I not implement? When do you say no to a customer? When they come to you and ask for which PIM should we choose? When do you say none?
Well, there's always a good fitting PIM, Martin, but no, I think in all honesty, what we see is people come to us when they already have a problem, and when stuff is breaking down. If you are able to manage your company from an Excel file and you're happy with that, I think even though you might benefit from a PIM, we just discussed the ROI and how to sell a PIM internally, you're not going to be able to sell it if people don't see the need. So people come to us when there is a problem, when you have 140 Google Sheets and spreadsheets managing supplier import, when you have data quality issues, but no insights into which products only have one image and which products have 6, and which products have no descriptions and which products have lacking attributes. Or another problem is when you are upgrading your ERP, but your whole PIM solution, your product information management solution, was actually built as a custom plugin on this 8-year-old version of your ERP system that you now want to upgrade. And suddenly you now have no PIM that can work with your new version of your ERP. So I think we always see that the problems drive the choice for a solution. Only when stuff breaks, people will start looking to implement a PIM and are able to muster the sort of organizational momentum to change processes, to come to a buying decision, and really implement a PIM. So I would say, when not to implement a PIM, when you have no problem, don't implement a PIM.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think everyone here around the table can agree on that. We have only one question left, but I also saved the best question for last. This is probably the one you'll be fighting most against. So here I will have just let everyone have to say something about it, and it's the same question we also discussed when we had our Shopware webinars, where we also was talking on the e-commerce part. Should it be an on-premise solution? Should it be a cloud, SaaS, or PaaS solution? What way do you go, and why? And I'll just start from the top of my list. I have Bart as the first picture over here. So, but everyone has to have an opinion on this, and I'll go through the whole list.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those philosophical academic questions which we discuss for a very long time. But from our perspective, what we see is definitely the benefit for cloud solution, for SaaS solution, where we are able very quickly to provide new functionalities for the customer. This is kind of no-brainer, and we pretty aware about that, but this is her downside. Yeah, we also, on the other hand, know that each customer will have the special requirements, special customization request, and so on. But I think that what is the benefit of the cloud is that sometimes this easiness of implementing of custom solution is not so, I would say, straightforward. So there is a point to discuss if this is necessarily needed, if this is, I would say, way to approach it, maybe with a standard way, to avoid situation which probably we all know from the classical on-premise world, that customer have a system, is it, I would say, PIM, Magento, or other e-commerce, developed, customized, and the upgrade is a nightmare. Is it something which we cannot find a business justification to do this? No one wants to pay for the technical upgrade without new business value. This is always a struggle. So from Ergonaut perspective, we approach this in the kind of hybrid way. So We have a cloud solution where we kind of providing new functionalities with very often releases, but on the other hand, we have a concept of internal apps which are extending the solution, and those apps might be provided by the partners. So they are operating within the framework. They are operating on Ergonote model. They are using Ergonote APIs. From user perspective, they are part of the solution as such. But with this, we have a kind of benefit of being cloud solution and easily upgrading, releasing new functionalities, providing new features. On the other hand, we have this advantage of flexibility as such. Of course, classical on-prem is still possible, and we are providing this if there is a necessity or justification. But from my perspective, it shouldn't be the default way. From my perspective, I'm proposing customer always to discuss about the cloud, what are the benefits, what might be the downside, and to pick the solution which is right for the certain case. But if I would say need to voting, I will be more in favor of the cloud solution with a certain extension possibilities, which are necessary, always needed. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's move on to clouds. Then we have both platforms and no clouds. You have like all the offerings, so you can choose.
I would say in that regard, it's a similar approach like Bart mentioned. So we're coming from the community. So that means we provide a software that can be downloaded by everyone, right? And so it can be running in every infrastructure at the end of the day. And this is how it goes for the last 13 years. And some of our clients are running it in their own infrastructure. Some are running it in private cloud infrastructure as well. And we as a vendor see our duty to provide comfortable ways of starting and ramping up certain scenarios nevertheless, or if it's Amazon or Google and so on. But I think when we're talking about on-premise, in fact, when it's about it's the main value, and I think Bart already mentioned, is the possibilities for building custom and implementing custom requirements, and that highly depends on the strategic approach of how to set up and use a technology system for my process. And there are clients out there who are really needing this, who are in need of this, have a high demand for doing custom processes, doing custom add-ons and so on. And I think therefore our community, but also our commercial enterprise edition is the right way to go. At the end of the day, also definitely in the last year, more and more in a PaaS environment, or private cloud environment. Therefore, we have our ecosystem, we have our partners, we have our technology partners, but also our worldwide solution and implementation partners. On the other hand, we see the other side, the other direction, where it's about that ramping it up very fast, setting it up within just some days, as Bart also mentioned. And in reality, often this can be used as well for using quick MVPs as well. So this is also what we see sometimes, that SaaS helps to try to get into that PIM thing, you know, to understand how to set up your data model, gathering internal information about, which processes do we need to set up, try this and that. And some of them are happy with SaaS, and some of them come to that point where they say, well, and now we are in that maturity that we say, well, now we would need these additional things, this customization, and PIMcore allows to do this. And I think this is, as I mentioned, part of our triple play strategy to allow data and experience management for anyone, which is part of our vision.
Thank you. So let's move on to Thomas from the agency side and hear the approach there. How much of the time do you use on consulting versus actually customization? It seems like that's where it differs on going the SaaS way or going with an on-premise solution.
So like, first of all, I would like to say that like from the client's way, the cloud solutions is like better because it's faster to having like this on board in the company, and also you don't have problems with the DevOps. You don't have problems with, like, for example, like 2 SLAs, the one for the app, one for the infrastructure, and all of that. But the cloud solutions, like what we've seen, for example, is also transition in Akineo, because when we started up to work with Akineo, it was the open source version. There was like some additional enterprise version, and that was a beginning. And now, on like from the many years, like the Akineo moved to the only like cloud versions that you actually, it's impossible currently to have a enterprise version of Akineo which is on premise. Like it's in a PaaS model or a SaaS model. But I think that if you go forward, like for next years, I'm not sure, maybe my connection is a little bit weak, but sorry for that. The cloud solutions could be good if, for example, the whole model for working with apps is ready, like the webhooks, like the model of an apps, like the places where you can integrate your additional features in the interface of the application. Because what said also but before, right, it's the always problem that you have a platform on premise, and then every year you need to invest a lot of money to have all like additional modules checked with the core and with all of these problems. Like the view for the APIs and the webhooks and the apps is actually could make these problems solved already, right? That actually is. Yeah. It's possible that you can have a platform which is actually every month you have a lot of features, but this way of acting with an app, with the webhooks, with the apps, with the APIs, with doing something additional app is actually making that the whole cost is actually bigger, because for the developers, for building software on top on the software, not as a plugin, but like and as another apps which is connected with the webhooks, apps, APIs, that is actually making, for example, AWS to cost an app with to doing that, but actually the cost is more complex for doing that. So, for example, the client, the value for the client is more features. It's some cases it's cheaper, but in some cases the cloud could be more expensive. But actually, from the developer's part, it's more complex to integrate it. Of course, there's like another advantage is that, for example, to create an additional features, you can use different languages, right? You can use a PHP, you can as a Node.js, you can use, for example, the Java, what actually your team understands. But like to have a sum up, you ask about the question. So I can say that in the bigger projects, it's few cost of the consulting, then 1/3 is a cost of like standard data migration and all of that, and 1/3 is actually the customizations. Yeah, so that's pretty what I can say in that case.
Thank you, Klaus. Is it a quick one you have?
Yeah, it's just wanted to throw in one additional perspective, that it's always about discussing about costs and if it's cheaper or more expensive. And I think this is most of the time the wrong discussion when you discuss about SaaS or on-prem, because it's for sure you have a fast ramp up using SaaS, but at the end of the day, you can't compare a SaaS project task management solution with a PIM project, because what the main thing that is different, and I think we were talking about this before, is that you the main efforts are in understanding your business requirements, your needed requirements for integrations, the data modeling, and so on. It doesn't help to have your SaaS solution running on the first day when you don't have a clue how you set your data model up, when you have not your colleagues from the different departments on track, committed, going into the same direction like you want to. That's just what I wanted to throw in.
Perfect, thanks. Then let's move on to Stefan. Seems like he's agreeing. It's not.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that again, it depends on the requirements, right? So what does your customer need? What does what do your end users internally need? What do your suppliers need? And then find a solution that fits, whether it's platform as a service or cloud or fully on-prem really doesn't really matter. Again, because it's such an integrated tool, and it needs to fit in your architecture as well. So fully agree with Klaus here.
Perfect. Then we have Hans as the last comment on this one.
Most of the times it depends on performance on the projects that we are experiencing. You could add functionality to cloud by building a second system that calls API. The problem is if you have to do massive changes or something like that, and you need to extract the data via API, the API channel is limited. On most of the times, it's just computing time, so calculation power. It's not network. It's because if you try to bring out a product presentation from a PIM, it needs to do some calculations. It needs to enrich attributes and stuff. And if you need just a small portion and you need to modify a lot of data, that usually extending cloud is very, very hard to accomplish within the performance goals of your customer. So most of the times we end up going with a PaaS or even on-prem solution, because if you have, most of the times we have requirements that are very, very deep inside of the core, and changing it in there and making a performance change in there because you have the possibility to do so because of open source software, that's most of the times the way that we are going. But I see that the app experiences in cloud is developing, it's growing, it's enhancing. I mean, cloud providers see the necessity to have at least some point of extension in very deep points of the system themselves. I mean, that is basically the success story of Salesforce like 15 years ago. They started from a pure SaaS solution, which had no flexibility at all. And then they opened up to extensibility for attendance-specific extensions. You have additional fields, you have additional models.
Scripting language.
Yeah, and so it began, and now they have like this integrated development environment with their own programming language where it's possible to do almost everything down to the core, but within a cloud solution.
Yeah.
Well, they are ahead like 10 years and a few $1 billion. But I think most of the cloud PIM providers will at least develop into this direction.
Yeah, that's a good point. This was the last question, and I just want to ask if there's anyone else attending this webinar that has a question. Then we have a bit of time for it. Then please either just speak up or write the question in the chat. Otherwise, we will say thank you for today. It's been fun to hear all the sides of the table, and I think it's been a good discussion about different things, and I hope everyone got something out of it.
Thank you, Martin, for moderating this panel discussion. It was a pleasure to speak with all of you and discuss. And I think we will wait if there are some questions.
Yeah, just wait just a minute or two. Otherwise, I'll see it as a success that we answer all the questions.
Very good interpretation of the situation.
Yeah.
Or nobody was listening at all.
Yeah.
Present.
I don't think there's any questions. So I will wrap it up here, and I'll say one more time, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And might be there is. That's just a smiley. Perfect. Have a good afternoon, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you very much for the discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.